Todd was my hero. And I say that because from day one, that's what I called him, was my hero. We were together for over 20 years. We were married. When he passed away, it was just about a month before our 15th wedding anniversary. He was kind and smart. He was the go-to guy for everybody. He was the calm in the storm, always. We've had so many people tell us that when he arrived on scene, like, everybody just knew he was gonna be okay because Todd showed up. In addition to 30 years in the fire service, he was a paramedic on the ambulance for 20 years on a private ambulance service. He was 3 years dispatcher at the sheriff's office, and then he did about 7 years as a police officer. Actually met him through a bunch of friends. In 2001, that was back in the day of AOL. And he messaged me, and I messaged him, and he lived right in town, had no idea I lived in town with him, and we met, and I honestly tried to hook him up with my best friend. Tried to hook him up with my best friend. That didn't work out, and she kept saying, "Why don't you date him?" And I said, "Because he's like a brother to me." Like, he's the best guy ever. And lo and behold, he kissed me one day. The jokester, the funny guy, but the rock. Like, he was the rock. He extremely outgoing. When Todd Werner walked in the room, everybody knew he was there. He had a presence about him, like an aura. You walked in the room and you just knew he was there. And you knew everything was gonna be okay.
Uncle Todd we were close in age, 10 years apart, almost like a brother. He was a brother and a father all rolled into one for me growing up. One of the steady role models that I had in my life, and I was so blessed to have him. Anytime you needed anything, he just was there. You know, you knew he would take care of it for you. And growing up in the childhood that we grew up in and I grew up in, he pushed me to be a better person. He pushed me to reach my full potential, and I looked up to him in everything that he did. And I wanted to make him proud, and I know that I did.
You did.
But I am so thankful for Uncle Todd and the sacrifices that he made for his communities and his family. He was just a very special person. Aunt Sonia had 3 boys, and he was a father to them. They were his sons from day one. And that's exactly how he always treated me. Like, anything I ever needed, he was awesome.
I met Todd through when I was dating my husband at the time, and we became close friends, and I met Sonia, and I was on actually a couple years after that I joined the fire department because of Todd. He could see the love that I had for it and the interest for it, and he was my mentor and he was my best friend there, and he always protected everyone. He was an amazing person. There are so many Todd stories that it's hard to choose just one, but I could tell you that that's something often that we hear all of the time is, "Oh, Todd, let me tell you a story about Todd." Because Todd was the best storyteller, and people could sit and listen to him for hours. We would be on calls the call would go out at 1 in the morning, and after the call we would go back to the station and do the paperwork, and we would sit there until 5 and 6 in the morning sitting on the tailgate of his truck while he told us all stories about previous fire department calls or ambulance calls the night before at work, police calls, just everything. He was the best storyteller, and he really was the best friend.
One of the stories that I mentioned this at his funeral. I was blessed to be able to speak at his funeral, and as Aunt Sonia mentioned, Uncle Todd wore many hats. But one time he was in his ambulance working the ambulance. He knew the streets in every town and every city like he was a road map inside of his head. So I'm sure he heard over the radio, as I think I was told this story, he heard over the radio there was a suspect they were in pursuit of. So he gets in pursuit of the suspect in his ambulance and apprehends them with a flashlight.
He did. So they were told to set a perimeter in the ambulance because they figured they were going to need the ambulance after this call. And I was so mad when I found out about it the next day. But yeah, he gets out and he holds it up and he holds this flashlight over it like this guy's in the dark. He has no idea what's going on. Todd's got a flashlight in his face, so he can't see anything. So Todd's holding this guy at flashlight until the police could come over and get him and put him in cuffs. I was so mad. I'm like, what were you thinking? He's like, what? He didn't know I didn't have a gun. It's like I wasn't gonna let him get away. I was like, oh my gosh.
I do have probably my most favorite story about Todd. And it was when him and Sonia were dating and we were at a fire department function. And he had not yet met her sons, and they were 2, 3, and 4. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, Todd, I said, aren't you worried? And he said, absolutely not. 3 little boys. I have a police car, I have an ambulance, and I have a fire truck.
What more could they love?
What more could they want? And he looked at me and he saw Sonia walking and he said, I'm gonna marry her one day. And he did.
He did.
He married his best friend.
He definitely was my best friend.
You know, so another story about Todd is that we were at the burn tower and I was not yet on the fire department, but I had been there and one of the wives, I had provided the food and whatnot for all the firefighters, and Todd was sitting on the front of the pumper truck. And he was watching all of the guys go in and out of the burn tower, watching them train, and he looked over at me and he said, you want to go in? You want to go into the burn tower? And I said, I do want to go in. And he said, well, let's put gear on you. And he took me in himself, and that was one of the greatest moments of my life.
And then she got sucked in.
And then I got sucked in, and I was no longer one of the wives, I was one of the firefighters. But I always felt very safe with Todd and with the department that he and the chief at that time had created. And it was wonderful.
You know, I'm not in the fire service, and I was not the wife of a firefighter, and I was not in the fire service like Aunt Sonia and Kathy, and so they have that connection to the fire service and they know firsthand what it feels like. But being his niece, and when he was in the hospital and he was in ICU on the ventilator, the hospital was filled with so many people to make sure that Aunt Sonia was taken care of. I mean, they had to reserve a special room at the hospital downstairs for the police and the fire department and the ambulances. And Uncle Todd was an organ donor, and when they transported him to the organ donor location, there were hundreds of fire trucks and ambulances lined up at one of the biggest hospitals in St. Louis to provide him with an escort.
Full escort with lights, sirens.
And you think that the feeling is so overwhelming. And then, you know, there's the funeral, Uncle Todd's funeral. We had to hold his funeral at a movie theater.
Just for it would be big enough.
Yes.
Because he was the fire chief in South Roxana. Because of working with the sheriff's office and the ambulance, he worked all over. So, and not even just our county, like he was very well known. Everybody knew Todd. Like there isn't a person that would, had to change the date of the homecoming in our town because me and Todd got married, because there was going to be no one to work it. To say Todd's name anywhere in our area, people knew who he was. People knew that he was there to help. Like he was just that person. I mean, his biggest concern was always what he could do for someone else. Always what he could do for someone else. His very last act of service, I mean, he donated his organs to help someone else. I mean, that's who Todd was. There wasn't a decision on whether I wanted to do it. That's who Todd was.
And the fire service and the first responder community showed up for him
and still do.
And his family. You know, we were worried Aunt Sonia would lose her home, or could she pay the bills? And, you know, I mean, gosh, it went through both of Kathy and I's heads. You know, we'll cash in our 401k, whatever we need to do. But money, just the communities we live in are small. Hundreds of dollars to make sure that the utility bills were paid, and groceries, that she had what she needed. And as her niece, and as, I mean, it gives you the most overwhelming feeling of love and dedication and support to see these people, these communities rally around your first responders. Just like the Backstoppers and what's happening here at this event at the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial. They just are, you know, Aunt Sonia has felt so loved and understood and supported. And that is so big to be her niece and her friend also. I want her to be okay without him, the best that she can be. And the community has really rallied around her and has shown that they will be there
and
for her.
everybody's said the same thing, like everybody that's, you know, donated or came over or, you know, fixed the porch or whatever they've done, it's always been like, Todd would do it for us.
Being here has really truly given all of us a feeling of comfort as well, because we are not alone in this hurt and in this pain, and we are seeing, you know, our friend's wife, my best friend, get the support that she needs.
Yeah.
This is the first time since his passing that we have been in public that it's not a fear of someone walking up and saying the wrong thing or not being able to show your emotions. And this weekend here and what everyone here,
It's healing.
it is very healing here. And we can feel the love. This is a wonderful, wonderful organization and foundation.
It's definitely healing. He was a great guy. He was my person. He was the best.
Here's to you, with that smile on your face. Here's to you, and what I want to raise to this moment we share, to the love